What's up, everybody? It is Jordan from Hive Mind Hobbies here with another Tyranid Tactics video. This video was actually recommended by a viewer in the comments section. So if you have any video ideas that you would like for me to go over, post them down in the comments and I'd love to take a look at them. This one is all about how I deploy my tunnels in Subterranean Assault and the process that I use in order to get the most efficient use out of my snaky boys. Before I go through the process on how I like to set up my tunnel markers, let's just refamiliarize ourselves with how they're supposed to be set up, and then we can kind of go from there. So, of course, you're going to create a tunnel marker when a burrower unit is set up from reserves. We're talking Raveners, Molochs, Trigons. And then you're going to make a tunnel marker within 1 inch of that unit and outside of 3 inches from enemy models. Now, this does mean that you can kind of cheat it a little bit by scooting the tunnel marker a little bit closer because it only has to be with 1 inch. And I believe the tunnel marker is not restricted from being 9 inches away. It's just the unit that you're setting up. You can also create tunnel markers a little bit closer using trigons, but I normally don't do that because I'm trying to punch with the trigon. And if I'm setting it up a little bit closer using the datasheet ability of deep striking just out of 6, then the trigon's not going to be able to charge. So I normally don't do that, but you can. In addition, after you've set up your tunnel marker, units can then deep strike or come from strategic reserves outside of 6 from enemy units, but they have to be wholly within 9 inches of the tunnel marker to simulate them jumping out of the tunnel. Super cool. Very cool. And then last but not least, the tunnel marker is removed if any enemy model gets within 3 inches of the tunnel marker. So those are the basics. When I am planning out where I'm going to be placing my tunnel markers, honestly, I play the entire movement phase in reverse. Literally, I start with pretend setting up my strategic reserves or my deep strikes. And the first thing I do is I measure 6 inches out from any enemy units that I think my units are going to have a good 6-inch charge into, and I really want them to get into combat. That's what I do first. I try and find a pocket. I'm going to show you an example in Tabletop Simulator in a moment, but I try and find a pocket of just outside of 6 inches of any important units that I want to, charge into. And then I kind of figure out where that is. Then I decide what units or packages of units that are going to go best into that unit and how I can get them there, and I will literally set up the units outside of 6 and see how big that place is. Then once I can figure out where those units are able to be placed, I then try and find where I can put the tunnel marker, and I measure 9 inches out from those units and make sure that those 2 units are going to be able to be wholly within a 9-inch diameter of a tunnel marker. And then I try to find the safest place to put that tunnel marker. And then once I find that, then I bring my burrows in just within 1 inch of that tunnel marker, and I'm going to try and string them back as far back as possible to be safe, because you really, really, really got to be careful with your Raveners. I'm assuming that's what you're using to make the tunnels. And then I kind of go through my movement phase. Now, here's what you should do. And I'll talk about this in a second. You do all of that and you talk to your opponent and say, I'm just mapping this out. This is not the end of my movement phase. Most people will understand. But what you could also do is just map it out, have you and your opponent agree with it, and then just take everything off the board again, do your movement phase, and then reset everything back up. Might take a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth doing. Let's take a look at it on Tabletop Simulator. Okay, so we're in our Tabletop Simulator example of exactly how we're going to set up these tunnel markers and go from there. All right, we're playing against Dark Angels. Sorry, Zach. This is my buddy. And again, this is not like I haven't paused the game or anything. I've just randomly kind of put models on the table to show examples. We're in a game. We're playing against Dark Angels, and we have a Land Raider that we want to try and charge at, and we want this squad over here to try and charge at. So we already have a tunnel marker over here. Let's say previous turn, these Raveners just went uppy downy and created that tunnel marker. So our game plan is we want to be able to bring in a Trigon, a Psychophage, a Haruspex, and then also teleport this Swarm Lord into something. Okay, that's going to be what we want to do through the tunnel network stratagem. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do before we even do any of our movement, I'm not going to go through a movement phase, but let's just check it out. We're going to see what can fit where. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure outside of 6 of both of these units, because I think we want to like multi-charge both of these units. So like 6 inches right there. Okay, and let's say I'm thinking we probably want to end up having the Swarm Lord and a Haruspex over here, 6 inches. Okay, so we're gonna go like that. That's the Haruspex. That's where the Haruspex is going to fit. Right there, we're outside of 6 of each. And then this is another really good reason why, especially if you're playing Subterranean Assault, you should have an extra Hive Tyrant. Oftentimes when I went to ATC, I brought a Demon Prince so that my opponent and I both knew that it was definitely not a unit in my army, but it's the same size base of my Hive Tyrant, so I can just pick up an extra Hive Tyrant and move it somewhere. Okay, especially if you're checking distances like this, having an extra model is great. Anyways, so we're also going to measure Swarm Lord here. So we want Swarm Lord and Haruspex to be there. Okay, that's going to be our first set of units that we're going to try in Deep Strike there. All right, and then the second one, I think it was a Psychophage and a Trigon. Let's do that. I think that's going to be also good. All right, and same thing, we're going to measure outside of 6. He can fit there. And then a Psychophage going here. And you know what? Thinking about it, there's actually a pretty good chance we want to... No, let's just keep it like this. This is fine. So we're outside of 6 there, the Trigon. And we're outside, let's scoot it back a little bit because I think TTS is clipping. Right, like that. Okay? And this is before we've done any of our movement. All right? So first step is done. We figured out that a Trigon and a Psychophage can fit here to get a 6-inch charge off of that Land Raider Redeemer. And then we figured out a Swarm Lord and a Haruspex can fit both here to get a 6-inch charge out of that. Next, we want... I'm going to get another tunnel marker. These are what I'm using for tunnel markers. Next, we want to be able to see what wholly inside of 9 inches looks like. So if we put a tunnel marker there, you see I'm measuring right here. It looks like it's too far away. So we're going to scoot that tunnel marker up just a little bit. And then you can see that by doing just that, this tunnel marker is easy peasy going to be placed right there. Another thing to note, like before we get into bringing up our burrows or anything, putting a tunnel marker right here is actually very annoying for your opponent because they're about to have a wall of a Haruspex and a Swarm Lord charging in, and then you can just bring more stuff through this tunnel. So this, I'm quite happy with this tunnel marker placement. All right, and then this other one, I have a feeling it's not going to be as simple and easy, but we're going to do our best. So if we just guess right there, no, it's too far. So we guess here. Easy peasy. We're going to actually just put it right here up against this wall. And I'm going to show you something in a second with this. Okay. And I'm just going to test. I know Hormagaunts aren't burrs, but I'm testing to see. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to simulate going through our movement phase. The only thing that I'm going to make sure is that these Hormagaunts are just not there. So they've moved somewhere else. They've moved to a greener pasture. Okay. Now, the real thing. We're going to set up our burrower units and make sure our burrower units are within an inch of each tunnel marker. So what you should always try to do, and it's going to depend on different terrain layouts, etc., right? You're not always going to be able to do this, but if you can, you should. All right, you're going to try and put your Raveners on the other side of a wall, but still within an inch of the tunnel marker and be there. Boom. So essentially, your Raveners are just, they have done two things. One, they have created a tunnel marker for your really cool monsters to come out and get a 6-inch charge. That seems very unfair for your opponent. And then they have also staged in a way for if your opponent pushes back at all, then your Raveners can counter attack again, and they're pretty safe and sound right there. Okay, so that is almost a perfect placement for Raveners to be right there, creating a tunnel, then for your Trigon and Psychophage to jump out of. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. Where's my other Raveners? We're going to do the exact same thing over there for our Swarm Lord and our Haruspex. And again, same thing. Putting the Raveners right here can be very, very tough. Now, here's the point where you could also even try. Let's see if we can fit our Raveners here behind this wall. They're like locked or something. Not bad. Give me a second. If we put our Raveners here, and we put our tunnel marker here. Nope, so it's just a little bit far out. And then here's the case that maybe you scoot Swarmlord just back a little bit, but still stay within 7. This might not be achievable with our Raveners being queued there, but same idea. If you put your Raveners right here, and the tunnel markers here, it's still going to be within that 9, and you're still going to be just outside of 6 with your 2 units that want to charge. Boom. That's how I make tunnels. Just wanted to say thank you for all the support we've been getting on the channel. It's pretty crazy how quickly the channel's been growing. I really appreciate all the support, all the likes, all the comments, the subs. It's crazy. We're at 1,200 subscribers, basically getting 100 subscribers a day. And it's very, very, very amazing. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for the support. A lot more Tyranid content coming your way. Another thing that I like to do in Subterranean Assault is always have deep strike packages. I like to use the buddy system with my bugs, and I promise you they're going to appreciate it if you do it as well. This means I'm going to bring a support piece along with a punch piece. Now, the support pieces are also going to hit kind of hard. The support pieces I'm talking about are like Swarmlord, Psychophage, Maleceptor. These pieces are going to either make it harder for your opponent to do things, like with Maleceptor and Swarmlord, because of Vect and -1 to hit, or they're going to allow for your units to just do their job better, like a Psychophage getting extra armor penetration from a Haruspex. You know, its big meaty claws having AP3 seems pretty good, as well as its weird mouth having AP2. So those are our support pieces. Those are pretty good examples with that. And then punch pieces are Haruspex I just mentioned. Swarmlord, he kind of flexes into either. And then Trigon Prime is a really, really good example of a support piece. Like Psychophage with Trigon Prime, all of its, 12 attacks getting AP3. Yeah, it's pretty good. And the reason why you want to do this is it's going to apply a whole bunch of pressure onto your opponent immediately. Like if you get all 4 of those, like if you're setting up 2 tunnels and having a huge go turn, which is kind of how I like to play it, and all 4 of those models get their 6-inch charges, and all of a sudden you're putting like 1,000, 1,200 points in your opponent's face, that's going to wreak a lot of havoc. And then it is going to be pretty tough for your opponent to claw back away from that. In addition, they're going to support each other. They're going to help each other, you know? And isn't that what Tyranids are all about? Just helping each other? Final thoughts. This takes practice, right? This is not going to be something that you're going to be immediately going to be able to do. And this is often a case where I think you should maybe practice, just like I practice deployment, you should practice setting up tunnels, making sure you know the rough footprint size of your different packages if you're using the buddy system with your units. And of course, as always, when you're playing, have a conversation with your opponent and make sure that your opponent agrees on the measurements that you are putting into place, and make sure everything is lining up before you go into shooting or the charge phase, so you don't have a moment where you're both like, oh, that's not exactly how that probably is supposed to work. So if you clear everything out during your movement phase, then it gives you plenty of time to adjust things and make sure that you and your opponent are both agreeing on the game state that is at hand. And that just goes to say, measure, measure, measure. You know, measure 6 inches, then measure the 9 inches wholly within the tunnel marker, then measure the 9 inches away with your Raveners, yada, 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 yada. Measure it, measure it, measure it, and measure it so your opponent can see too, so you can all agree again on the game state and how those tunnel markers are going to come about. But again, last but most importantly, what do you think? What kind of tactics are you using in Subterranean Assault or any other Tyranid detachment? Put them down in the comments below, and I'd love to see what's happening within the hive mind. That is it for today's video on creating tunnels through Subterranean Assault. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. Like, subscribe, do all those cool things. Appreciate all the help, and I'll see you next time. Bye!